Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. That is for being codependent. Now in your 20s, you're exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in crap relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hey girl, Marissa here. Today we are talking about codependency in therapy, right? How, as codependent dummies, can we be codependent with our therapist? And I'm going to share how I have been codependent. Well, how I was codependent with a therapist and then how one therapist was codependent with me. It happens. And before that, I want to share a few things. So first, girl, thank you for listening. You listening to this right now. You. Yes, you. I'm getting about 60 listeners a week. So you are one of 60. Thank you so much. It's been 3 months since I first aired, and I'm so glad to those of you who are new and those of you who have joined me for the first 16 episodes. Number 2, second thing to address, I have an Instagram and TikTok. So be sure to follow me at Codependent Dummy. And third, thank you to the listeners who have volunteered to be interviewed for the Codependent Dummy Dilemma. Michelle, Molly, Alejandra, thank you so much. And short update for everybody, if you guys had listened to Alejandra's episode, she was accepted to a graduate program. So there's at least potential that she will go. So congrats to her. And if you're interested in coming on and having me walk through your own codependent dummy dilemma, where you are having a hard time prioritizing your needs over others, finding it difficult to maintain or set a boundary, or caring too much about what other people think as opposed to what you think, holla at your girl. Okay, that is it for checking in. So today's topic, right? Discuss how we can be codependent with our therapist or vice versa. In her book, Codependent No More, which I've mentioned on a couple episodes now, Melody Beattie, she describes a codependent person as one who has let another person's behavior affect him or her, and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior. She continues that the other person could be a child, adult, lover, spouse, sibling, grandparent, parent, client, friend, therapist, who knows, right? So basically she's saying the list could go on and on. And they could be any of those things, and also an alcoholic, addict, mentally or physically ill, or normal with occasional mood swings, right? It's really like anybody. So she adds that as codependents, the heart of the definition lies in the ways we let other people's behavior affect us and in the ways we try to affect them, right? The obsessing, controlling, obsessive helping, caretaking, and so on. I think I just heard my neighbor's car. So welcome, neighbor's car. All right, so 2 experiences where codependency came up for me, where I was a codependent dummy and either care took for a therapist or they care took me. And yes, that is a word. Speaking of words, there are going to be lots of definitions today. So gird your loins, which I looked up. I encourage you to Google it, but it's from back in the days when men wore loins, basically sheets around their waist, and they would gird them like shorts they could move around. So gird your loins means like get ready. So first, caretaking. What does caretaking even mean? It means to look after, right? Look after people. Just looking after. Just gonna look after that person. And a caretaker is a person who gives physical or emotional care to someone, such as a child, an old person, or someone who's sick or not capable, which I think a lot of the time we tend to give physically and emotionally to someone who we sense isn't capable of whatever the task is at hand. All right, so my first experience, I was caretaking for my therapist. And all in all, I've seen a total of 7 therapists in the past 12 years, almost 13 years. I've seen some for years at a time and others for a one and done session. And I'm also a therapist for those of you who don't know. So this is, I walk the talk, which is why I've gone to a lot of therapy. So my second therapist and I started when I was 20 years old, and I was in the throes of a codependent breakdown. I just didn't know it at the time. I thought I was anxious, depressed, and binging on too much food. However, if I was really able to look back at it, I was anxious about disappointing people. I was depressed because I felt like I was a disappointment to my parents and others. And I was binging on all that food for multitude of reasons, but just to cope with that worry and sadness about being such a disappointment. But I thought I was anxious, depressed, and eating too much. So I started therapy with this very nice white man who was in his 40s, bald. He was a nice guy. And I shared with him about my anxiety, depression, poor grades, overeating. He gave me homework assignments, and being codependent, I was a good client, right? He, like everyone in my life, was another person added to my list of those who I let affect me, and I was obsessed with controlling his behavior, right? Controlling. If he said to go to the student center and lie in their calming chair, I went. I think it was like a nap chair, actually. And if he said, this week you need to talk to a friend about what's really going on with you, I did. And these are all good things, right? But what is my underlying motive in completing those tasks? Did I truly want to go to the university center to lay in a chair that people used to take a nap during the day? Or, right, like at the time, reflecting back, I was sleeping too much. So I didn't need a nap. And did I truly want or feel ready to talk to my friend about what was going on? Or was I doing it because I was letting his behavior, right? I had gotten approval from him thus far. Was I letting his behavior affect me and obsessed with controlling his behavior, right? Maintaining that positive vibe. And I did look up controlling, right? I don't mean that I was literally trying to control my therapist. I was just trying to control how he perceived me the hour that we met. And during the moments that week, if and when he thought of me. I was not obsessed with controlling him all the time, but I would think obsessively about making sure I did my homework, I was prepared for session, and hoping I would get a gold star, A plus, pat on the back for being the best client. That is the ultimate sign of having control, right? If I make him see me as the best, I am letting his behavior affect me, and I am obsessed with controlling that, right? So in the dictionary, controlling, do you know what controlling actually means? It means determining the behavior of, supervising the running of, right? We always say that, oh my God, like that, he's so controlling, or my boss is so controlling. And for codependence, right, we're just really trying to determine the behavior of others. We are supervising the running of other people as they interact with us, right? I just want to determine your behavior while I'm interacting with you and while you're thinking of me. And I did look up obsessed, right? Like we're obsessed with controlling their behavior. What does obsessed mean? Of a person, it means to be preoccupied with or constantly worrying about something. That's it, right? I'm just preoccupied. I'm just constantly worrying about about how my therapist perceived me, is perceiving me. So, outside of therapy and before therapy, if I'm anxious about disappointing others and depressed because I feel like a fat disappointment, I'm going to obsess, right? I'm going to worry about controlling. I'm going to worry about determining the behavior of my therapist so he's not disappointed in me, right? I don't want him to be part of this club. And what this meant was I was not 100% honest with him about what was really going on. I eventually did open up more and more about my binge eating, which led to tons of help and me attending a 12-step program for it for some time. But if and when I would get blacked out, wasted, since I wasn't magically cured of my depression and anxiety by the nap chair, I would say I drank a lot this weekend. Or if I had a really big binge and I had very odd behaviors, I would go and find a quad around campus that was deserted and I would eat there because I didn't want to eat at home around my roommate because I codependent, don't want anyone to negatively perceive me. I would just say like, "Oh, food's been bad this week." Right? Or even when I had a steamy and scandalous one night stand, or maybe it was really spotty and shame inducing, I would make vague statements about meeting a guy in order to avoid disappointing my therapist with my debauchery. So there I was, preoccupied with how I could determine his behavior, right? Don't be disappointed. And I was denying, hiding, and suppressing parts of myself, that I was doing the same thing inside of therapy that I was doing outside with everybody else. And the quintessential example of my codependency with this therapist, okay? After working with him for a few months, I was not doing better. Specifically, my overeating was getting worse, and I had gained weight in therapy. And I remember I felt so guilty. I was like, oh my God, I've been in therapy, what, like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I owe this man, I owe my therapist progress, right? He needs to know that he is being helpful. And I really thought I could disappoint him by not losing weight. And I felt compelled to caretake, right? To look after him and his expectations of my progress. And what that manifested into was I went to the student center and I perused the card aisle. I found a very cute thank you card, right? I still remember this card like 10, 12 years later. And it had a cartoon of goldfish in a bowl. I think it's something like tanks for your help or and I can't remember what I wrote specifically, but I know that it was apologetic and remorseful. Like, hey, therapist, I know you're working so hard to help me, and I'm sorry my progress has been really slow. I'm really trying. Like, thank you so much, Marissa. Right? Like I sense I was trying to convey, don't give up on me. And I know that I gave it to him and we had our session. I don't think he opened it or we didn't talk about it. I just know that the next week I showed up and the card was on his like shelf or desk area. And I remember being like, yes, right? I'm up there for, with the little trinkets and pictures. And now, right, fast forward to being a therapist, I am like, WTF, Marissa? Like, why did you write that? And what did that mean? What did that symbolize? And Mr. Therapist, why didn't you talk to me about the card? And how insane it was to have your patient apologize for not making progress, right? Like you would be disappointed in her. Like she owed it to you to make progress to please you. Like, oh, like if I got a card like that, there'd be some processing. And reflecting, right? Like what if I had been honest with him about those one night stands, about my self-hate, my weird binging behaviors, my sadness and despair, like my worries that I'm disappointing him, right? To show up and sit down and say, it's been a couple months, I've gained weight and I feel bad. I feel like I'm not making enough progress for you in therapy. Right? Those are great questions to be asked and answered in therapy. But I was a little codependent. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 20. I'm not a professional. And he unintentionally reinforced my caretaking, my codependency in appreciating this letter, this thank you card, putting it on his shelf, and not trying to question or poke at what does that represent, right? What is going on here that you feel like you owe me a thank you card a couple months in due to your lack of progress, right? So for you, you codependent, to be mindful of 3 points. First, if and when we hesitate to be honest with our therapist. Yes, it's hard to be honest, but if you are keeping things, I encourage you to ask yourself, is it a need to develop more trust? Or am I trying to make sure I maintain a certain image with my therapist? Right? Am I obsessed with am I worried, preoccupied with controlling their behavior towards me? Second thing to be mindful of, if you find yourself worrying that you are disappointing your therapist, you look at that. Okay, these people, including me, we are licensed professionals and work with young women just like you who are struggling mentally and emotionally. Okay, so you cannot reenact, that means repeat the same patterns outside of therapy, in therapy, with your therapist, right? So if you fear disappointing them, I encourage you to find a way to bring it up. Hey, I listened to this podcast and she talked about how she used to be afraid of disappointing her therapist. And, I find that I'm worried about disappointing you, and go from there. Third point, if you have or are thinking about writing a don't give up on me thank you card, don't. Okay. Do not be like me. You do not owe them your progress. You owe it to yourself to be honest with how bad you're feeling, and they owe you a space where you can talk through it. Okay? You don't get to talk about this elsewhere, but you do in therapy, which is why therapy is so sacred. But no, I'm sorry card. Okay? All right. The second experience where I was really caretaken. So Melody Beattie, she talks about in her book, Codependent No More, there's a whole chapter on characteristics of codependence. It's lengthy, so I encourage you to look at it. But some to highlight for today's discussion: characteristics, caretaking. Okay, that was a little repetitive, but I'm going to keep it in. So caretaking, low self-worth, denying, poor communication, weak boundaries, and a lack of trust. In 2018, I went back to therapy because I got married, got licensed, started looking for a new job. I purchased a home. I moved out of my parents that I had and have had a high functioning codependent relationship with. So that was really hard. And I moved in with my husband, right? So lots of transitions, and there was a need to start processing all of that. I found a female therapist, Latinx, who I related with a lot. And we met for over a year, and she helped me, right, with these transitions, setting healthy boundaries, etc. And one area of my codependency that she really helped me look at was with finances. Before that, I had a long-term codependent relationship where I was heavily reliant on my mom and dad's financial support. Okay, and it manifested in different ways. One example, or one specific way, is I would have a crisis, a financial crisis, something would happen. I would call them despondent. Okay, just the waterworks, and explain what had happened, like having a hard time conveying, talking, and they would offer to pay for it. Okay, so I remember I was probably 19 or 20, and my laptop got stolen from my dorm room, and I was all sad about it. It was totally my fault, 100%. And they I called them crying, despondent, devastated, and they paid for a new one, right? So, mom and dad, if you're listening, and for other listeners, nothing is wrong with that, right? Absolutely nothing is wrong with a 19-year-old getting her laptop stolen and her parents helping her. However, if it keeps happening, right, at 20, 25, 30, 35, or annually, right, we are starting to create and foster dependency, right? Codependency. Also, in my late 20s, right, so that was the example. So back to therapy. In my late 20s, my parents, they always treated when we went out to eat. Nothing is wrong with that, right? But when they paid, I, right, starting to be more conscious of myself and how I was feeling. In that moment, I felt like a little kid, right? And I shared that in therapy. I remember my therapist was she highlighted it. I remember we were talking about dinner and yeah, my parents treated and she asked a question and I was like, "Oh yeah, they always pay." She's like, "Huh." And I added how my dad would make remarks, right? Arguably, since I was 25, he would say something like, I can't wait until the day when you can treat us while paying. And it's like, okay, then just don't invite me to dinner if it's so inconvenient, or just ask me to save up and treat everybody. Like, it was confusing, right? This mixed message. So we did some unpacking in therapy, and ultimately around that time I decided I'm going to start paying for myself in big ways, big and small, including if and when we go out, I'm going to pay for myself, or like I'll pay for my partner, my husband and I. And right, it was interesting. When I started to do that, my parents, like, they'd make faces or hand gestures and like go along with it. But it was like, oh, okay, like if you want to. And before, I was the child. My parents felt helpful and needed, and now I was pushing back. There was a shift, right? And there was a response, but they did oblige and allowed me to pay. Around that time, my dog, Bella, she was diagnosed with cancer at 16. And I, right, finding my financial independence, I decided to pay for a bougie veterinarian to come to our house and provide euthanasia in the backyard. And we had this beautiful ceremony, and they really took care of everything. It was so, so nice. And it was $500. I wanted to do it. I was starting to spend my own money and make decisions financially on my own. My dad was surprised at the cost, but never mind his surprise, right? I am paying for this on my own. I am becoming independent in my late 20s financially, and I'm not going to be affected by my dad and obsessed with controlling his perspective on my finances and spending, right? Again, like that need for approval was there, but I'm really trying to pay for things on my own. So around that time, right, I just paid for my dog being put down. Rest in power, Bella. I, like a couple months later, I had a dental emergency. Okay, you guys, I ate like a corn on the cob and I had crowns and dental work, and my two front teeth got completely messed up. So I had to get brand new crowns for, I think it was 2 or 3 grand, and insurance wasn't going to help. So that happened. And around that same time, my car got broken into, my tablet was stolen. So I had to deal with the finances of repairing the car and replacing the tablet. Okay. Just a heads up, you guys, this is what starts to happen when you create new boundaries or roles for yourselves as codependent diamonds. Okay. I don't know why, but it's a test and we're going to have to go through it where right here I was around that time wanting to play big and take up space financially. And then I had all of these experiences, these debacles happen. And it was a test. Like, do you truly want to grow, Marissa, or do you want to stay the same? And begrudgingly, right, I chose to grow. But being a grown up and not being financially codependent with my parents, like it obviously was starting to suck. And I remember crying at dinner with them. I think we were eating out. I think I paid for myself. And just with the napkin and the tears, and I said, I'm paying for stuff. I'm choosing to do this, and this is hard. This is hard. Being a grown up, being independent of your support. I didn't say all of it, but I was like, this is hard. Being the kind caretakers that they were, I remember the next day, my mom, right? She called and she was like, hey, Dad and I talked. We want to give you a loan. So just to help you right now, and then you can pay us back, but just, to get you back on track. And right, so thoughtful, right? That really looking after me. And, I'm 29 years old. I have a full-time job. I just bought a house. So evidently I have money. And I can afford it. It sucks, but I can do this, Mom and Dad, and I want to. So thankfully they did. They respected that boundary and supported me in my overwhelm. And my therapist, she was helping me cope with all of this too, right? Just week after week, hearing me, supporting me. And the same ish time of all of this, I found out that I would no longer be able to see her through my insurance and would have to jump from paying her $30 an hour to her hourly rate of $150. Okay, so $120 more a week. So $480 more a month. Okay. Dead dog, new crowns, new window, tablet. Woe is me. And in session, right, this all culminated crying to her. And I said, I'm spending all this money and I'm sad because my insurance is changing and I can't afford to pay your full fee. So I won't be able to see you anymore. Right? Does this sadness and crying about money remind you of anything? Right? Maybe me crying to my parents during a crisis and then swooping in to save the day. Right? It's not a bad thing for parents to help, but as we grow older, what is the message being conveyed through that action? Why are you offering the support? Hold that thought. Crying and sniffling, my therapist stopped me and said, I will keep seeing you at your copay of $30 every other week. Right? Underneath that, let me swoop in and save you from this financial crisis, Marissa. And in the moment, so generous. I felt so thankful, so appreciative. Oh my goodness. What an amazing therapist. But going back to Melody Beattie's definition, right? If we really think about it, you guys, my therapist allowed me to affect her behavior, and she was obsessed with controlling mine. Right? How overwhelming it might have been for her to see me crying, catastrophizing, panicking, worrying. And it was like, no, right? I will help you. I will sacrifice. I will look after you. But I think about it too. And I know some of you are like, that's so nice of her. Like, that's so helpful. You should be grateful. There was no discussion, right? There was no exploring my options. Nothing. Just her assuming that this was the best thing for me and for her. And I didn't realize it at the time, but we were reenacting, we were repeating the same thing that happened with my parents. And we met, and I think, it was like 4 sessions for $30. And I continuing to work on my financial independence, right? Want to play big and take up space. I had read You Are Badass by Jen Sincero. Y'all should read it. I was feeling ready. I looked at my options. I discussed with myself. I problem solved. And I went in and I said, I want to build up to paying your full fee. And one main reason why I did that is because at that same time, I invested in a $2,000 course. So evidently, I could afford to see her weekly for 3 months and a week. That's the equivalent of $2,000 at her rate, right? So evidently, when it really came down to it, I could afford her full fee, and I probably could have afforded it that same week that I was having the breakdown. So the dissonance and hypocrisy, it was too much for me to handle. So I got the $2,000 course and I went into therapy, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. I figured it out. I want to build up, get to your full fee, and pay your full fee. Her response, how come? And I was like, what do you mean, how come? I want to be an adult and pay your rate, and you don't have to sacrifice or go without for me. I don't want to feel like a burden. I don't want to feel like you're giving me a discount, so I need to be on time. I need to be prepared. I need to be entertaining. I need to be comical. I loved it. I loved it when she would laugh. So I don't know. I think with the discount, there was an unspoken burden that I took on, again, to be an ideal client, right? I didn't want to disappoint her. So we worked out a plan where I would increase in increments the next few sessions. But even the next time I came, and I think I paid her like $40 more that time, and handing her the money, right? Like she said, she was like, Marissa, like, I am not asking this of you. Like, if you want to do this, just know, like, it's coming from you. It's not coming from me. Uh, uh, I like I'm trying to pay you your hourly rate. Like what? Like take the money. And again, is this reminding you of how my parents responded when I started to pay for my own meals? Like why? What are you right? We're gonna say that we want and can't wait for you to treat us, but why are you paying for yourself? So with this therapist, we did end up terminating. I was put off by these interactions. I felt angry, and I ended up finding a therapist who was charging way more than her. And I've been seeing him weekly for the past year because I was able to figure it out on my own. And it's a monthly expense. And I budget and I save and I problem solve, and I have figured it out on my own. So, in her book, Melody Beattie, she also adds a characteristic of codependency, which is anger. Right? As codependents, as you're hearing this, I'm curious if for me and for you, you have experienced what it's like to be the caretaker, and you also have experienced what it's like to be care taken, care took, right? I know I have experiences from my childhood in relationships in my 20s and now currently where, right, I am not caretaking everybody, and I'm not being taken care of either. My codependency has manifested different ways where, right, with ex boyfriends, I took care of them. And then with friends, employers, professors, they really took care of me, right? So, hearing what I've shared today, instances where I was caretaking for my therapist and where I have been caretaken. And reflecting on this second experience, I sense that the caretaking of others for me has kindled and fueled a fire of anger in me. Because deep down, you don't think I can do this? You don't think I have the inner and outer resources to figure this out? And if I'm not able to figure this out, you don't think I can handle the consequences? Fuck you. Right? It's it's really, really deep down this anger that at least I have had and that Melody writes about. Right? She says that we build this resentment, we build this anger. And I know sometimes too, like if I'm caretaking, like I did for my exes, and they're not following or listening, I get really angry. But when people really infantilize, right? When they make it just seem like I'm this delicate little baby, or they assume I can't handle it, or they assume that I need help, I do on some level. That's infuriating. That's insulting. And I know, right? When I was caretaking those ex-boyfriends, they would get so annoyed. Like, Marissa, back off. Marissa, calm down. Like, I'll do it on my own. I'll figure it out because I am communicating. I don't think you'll figure it out. I don't think you can do it on your own. So, to be delivering that, of course, they were angry. And also to be the recipient of that, right? With my therapist in the second example, that was really hurtful, right? Like give me some homework, give me some time, give me some space to deal with reality. This is reality, right? People have seasons. This was my season of financial crises. I was signing up for this. Let me cope. Let me deal. Let me fall apart. Let me make mistakes. I have to learn. And her sacrificing, going without for me, overall, overall, it wasn't helpful, right? In the moment, but we just stay in a pattern. So there's my 2 cents, a little bit about anger. Sure, we'll talk about anger in an upcoming episode. And for you, girl, as a codependent diamond, right, we need to be mindful of like 3 points. First point, I already alluded to this, but what is my therapist conveying in the moment, right? They're there. Let me take care of you. Let me take care of this because I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can. And I don't know if you can. I can't handle these emotions, Marissa. Like you're crying a lot. This is really overwhelming and uncomfortable. Can you just stop crying? Right? Corey Rosenthal, she gave a great example of as a child, if we fall over and our parent picks us up and says, "You're okay. You're all right. You're okay." It's like, okay, I guess I am. I guess I am okay. I guess I am all right. I better shut up or, okay, fine. Ice cream. So understandable. Okay, parents, all of you who did that. And at an extreme extent, right, it does convey strong emotions. They got a limit, got to put a cap on it, which is not sustainable. So, right, be mindful of when you or others are capping your emotions. Second, what would it have been like to just let me cry? Right? I sense our codependency when we caretake others or they caretake us. We are trying to shield others and ourselves from life. This is life. Shit happens. And when we swoop in, rescue, caretake, sacrifice, it just breeds more codependency. Since okay, I wasn't able to cope with that last reality. I'm not going to be able to cope with this next one. I'm going to call you every single time because This isn't supposed to be happening, right? Like, help. Okay. Third, where is the responsibility being placed? My therapist did not assign me any responsibility. It was 100% her, 0% me, right? What would it have been like to sit there in my watching me wallow, say, oh, it's really overwhelming. This is really hard. And, between this week and next week, I want you to look at your finances, check your budget, and see what you can make work. Because in reality, I could. I really, really could make it work. I could. I honestly, at the time, I could afford her full fee weekly. And, right, I know we have a connection. I know we have a connection therapist. But if I'm changing insurance plans, worst case scenario, I can go see another therapist who takes that insurance, right? Like, there are so many options that we can choose from that we don't tend to see as codependents when we are caretaking, and also as codependents when we are the recipient. So, being mindful, where's the responsibility being placed? And what are our options? What are our other options? Because they're there. All right, girl. Questions for you to ask yourself. What came up while listening to this episode? How have you caretaken or been caretaken by a therapist? How are you reenacting the same codependent relationships from your childhood as an adult with your therapist? How are we unintentionally breeding anger in those we caretake for by assuming that they can't deal, and we either verbally or non-verbally convey that to them? And how are you dealing with your underlying anger you have for being told, I don't think you can do it, or you just need to rely on me? I know I ate a lot of mine, so wonder what you do with yours. Your homework: if you feel like you are caretaking for your therapist, what can you do to start showing up more authentically? And if you feel like your therapist is caretaking you, what can you do to set boundaries around the fee, their policies, etc.? And that is it. Episode number 17. Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out www.codependummy.com to sign up for my free course, Codependummy 101. It's 10 parts to help you stop being such a codependent dummy so you can shine like a codependent diamond. And as always, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. Between this week and next week, I want you to get out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Take care. Hey sis, it's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster, I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end, and know this: if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you feel like you don't matter, know that you matter to me. Until next time, be sure to check out codependummy.com for more info about today's episode, my free course, and other resources. Take care. You're still here? Just kidding. Girl, this is not therapy, and I'm not your therapist, okay? This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the publisher, or the guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional information. If you want or need a professional, you should find one.